Welcome to Null News Now. My name is Merrick Counts, and I am going to be your host this evening. The Chromium DNS hijacking detection system has been accused of almost half of all the root queries out there. I did not do all the validation of this, but the accusations have been made. But really, is the cost of security too high to pay? Another thing in security that reminds us all of our internal procedures, IT blunder deleted 145,000 users' personal chats in a Microsoft Teams system. This is again just a call that your security. Security is not just about keeping other people from data, but it's also about protecting that data and making it available when users want or need it. This would be a failure in the ability for them to recall those chat messages. So remember, security is also about availability. And in that, Adobe Lightroom lost a lot of data from users who use their mobile apps. This is not unlike several weeks ago when Canon lost pictures from their cloud and succumbed to succumbed. I don't know how to say it. When they were attacked and their files encrypted on them and they didn't pay. So remember, and Canon then also lost users' photos. So remember, security is not just about people stealing the data, but it's also about the ability and availability. So that brings us on to Istio 117 was released. And for all of you who are wondering if there's something that is in multiple categories, I will announce it in multiple categories. So Istio 117 or 1.7 was released with a focus on security. So go check out their blog with some of the stuff that they did. Links, as always, will be below. HBO gave Linux the middle finger. It seems like they turned up the wide-by DRM and have disabled their service on Linux computers. So if you have Linux and HBO Plus, have fun. All right. Tesla's Gigafactory was the target of a cyber attack, and it was thwarted by NASA as well as an employee. So good job there, thwarting a large cyber attack. Stringlefire is a new open source project released by Adobe that is all about finding randomly generated strings in plain text. This has several security implications, as you can use it to look for API keys, hashes, and other randomly generated strings so that you make sure that you don't check those things into source code. You wouldn't imagine how many times I've seen passwords or other things in source code. So that's a new open source project that's out there. It's written in Python, I believe, and you should check it out, especially if this is something your team struggles with. All right, moving on to open source from the security bulletins. Again, Adobe released Stringlefire, whatever, and tries to detect randomly generated strings in open source or in plain text. All right. Another news, Gitpod is now open source. Kind of. It's under the AGPL, which a lot of people call this the Amazon GPL. And if you're not familiar with it, basically it's to try to keep people from like Microsoft, Amazon. It doesn't allow you to provide it as a service. But it gets a little bit worse. So it actually has 3 licenses, which is a very confusing licensing structure. So MIT is all for the install scripts. So there's some bash scripts, I think, that installs it somewhere. Anyways, so those are covered under MIT. And then there's this GPF license, which I think is their own license. I'm not familiar with it, and I couldn't really find much on it. but there's this GPF license that's, I believe that covers other aspects of it, but you have to look for the files that are labeled with that. And then everything else is under the AGPL. So it's a little bit of a licensing nightmare, but it is also a cool project, so you should go check it out. Kubernetes 1.19 is finally released. This is the longest release cycle in Kubernetes history. Go check it out. I will be releasing later, actually next weekend, a video on everything new in 1.19, ranked from highest to lowest. So if that interests you, please come check that out. All right, moving on to Kubernetes. Of course, another duplicate, Kubernetes 1.19 is released and out in the wild. So go check the release notes out. I am doing an in-depth breakdown of Kubernetes 1.19 and some of the core components in the ecosystem. That will be released this following weekend. So if that interests you, please come check that out this in a week. Istio 1.7 is released, and on top of the security features that were brought on with that, there was also some features brought in for multi-tenancy as well as VMs. So why VMs? It's not that it's managing, but it helps you use VMs that run legacy things. So possibly not all of your services are brought into Kubernetes, and it allows you to service mesh with those VMs. So check out the full release notes. The links for that are down below, like usual. K3S is now a CNCF sandbox project. So if you're not familiar with what K3S is, it's like a lightweight Kubernetes project that's kind of built for the edge. If you want to know my thoughts on that, leave a comment down below about the K3S project, and I can go into detail with my thoughts on K3S. But it is now a CNCF sandbox project. All right, moving on to cloud news. All right, so Azure really only had one big thing this week that I saw was newsworthy. Their immersive reader is now generally available. If you don't know what the immersive reader is, it helps readers read and comprehend text in over 70 languages. It's pretty cool, and it's worth it checking out. And it's now generally available. All right. This is just cloud news. So if you want more information on Azure or other things that Microsoft is possibly doing related to C# or any of those, you need to let me know, join the Discord server, and post some things that you're interested in. AWS. All right, so Amazon has been busy. The very first thing that I found super interesting on AWS was the Amazon Simple Service Network. Not exactly at all, whatever. It's the Amazon Simple Notification Service. Released a new Java client library that upped the payload side from 256 kilobytes to 2 gigabytes. It's a large jump. They do this by sending a small SMS or a small SNS with a link to an S3 bucket, and basically they just upload that 2 gigs to the S3 bucket, send the SNS that links to that S3 bucket, and downloads it. So anyways, that's a new library released. So basically you can now use IO2 and you get better volume and durability and higher IOPS all at the same price. So if you're an elastic block storage user, check out IO2 versus IO1 and make sure you're using IO2. CloudWalk's integration with the AWS toolkit for VS Code now supports working in code, so you can interact with your CloudWatch logs while using VS Code and the toolkit that's already provided. So check that out, especially if you use a lot of CloudWatch logs. You can now connect Apache Kafka to applications with Amazon managed streaming for Apache Kafka in the Europe AWS region. So Amazon AppFlow has now released a public API, so it can be accessed programmatically, so you can use scripts and whatnot to interact with that API instead of having to do everything manually. So if you are an AppFlow user, go check that out. The first blockchain course from AWS Training and Certification has been released. So if you are big into the blockchain, then go ahead, take a look at that. DigitalOcean. Let's move on. They really didn't have a whole lot going on. In DigitalOcean's place, Snowflake files for an API, API. It files for an API. There's a large, lengthy legal process to get an API, and they've just filed for it. Snowflake has filed for an IPO. Now, I think that Snowflake is really a competitor to some of these larger database providers, but I actually think that it's a win-win-win-win for everyone, because if you look at Amazon, AWS, and Amazon and AWS. If you look at AWS, Azure, and Google, and which would be some of their larger competitors, maybe MongoDB. Snowflake is actually powered by their clouds. Like all of their infrastructure is hosted on there. So the bigger Snowflake is, the more all of those large companies make from it anyways. So I don't think that they're super worried, but they file for an IPO and they're going public. So yeah, they're worth keeping an eye on and checking out if you haven't. Some large companies have started using them. Moving on to Google. Anthos is now easier to use. Maybe. So there's several new features around AIs and hybrid environments. And you can go check out their blog, link below, to read more on exactly what those are. But they also made service first for more types of workloads and supposedly faster development cycles, though I really found it quite confusing how they made that assumption at all. Cloud SQL, Google's fully managed database service, it manages MySQL, Postgres, and SQL Server databases, has just released support for MySQL 8, which comes with security benefits as well as high availability. So you can run your MySQL 8 workloads on Google's Cloud SQL now. The week 7 of Google's Cloud Next was all about monetization and kind of boring, so I'm not really going to cover much of it. BigQuery Omni, which was actually from July 15th or 14th. I'm bringing it up because I thought it was worth a mention. It's actually a pretty cool project that allows you to do multi-cloud analysis and supposedly cost effectively, although it's pretty expensive. And it allows you to do it across GCP as well as AWS and coming soon, Azure. The real downside of this is it wasn't really made open source. So really it's something that runs in Google's cloud and is just for them. So if you're a GCP user, check out that. It looks pretty cool, especially if you're trying to run in multiple clouds. So, all right. That's it for Google. Would anybody be interested in IBM and Red Hat? I can add it to the list. I'm trying to keep the list focused on what you guys would like to hear about on a weekly basis, but I can add it to the list if it would be interesting to you guys. All right, moving on to technology in general. Elon Musk would like to drill a hole in your skull. He is opening up pre-orders at givemuskmymoney.com. It'll be $25,000, and in about 15 years, you can let Elon Musk drill a hole in your skull. That being said, they did show a pig Gertrude with a brain implant. So if that's your type of thing, you can watch the whole thing on the whole video. which is, of course, linked below. And you can see the pig Gertrude with a brain implant. I found it very oddly. There was many claims. I saw very little data supporting that in the presentation, but there were pretty graphs and a pig. So go ahead, check that out and see what that is. Amazon Drive is kicking third parties. So if you used Amazon Drive and you used it with a third party app, that is going to go away. Planeteer CEO rips Silicon Valley in a letter to investors. That has got to be fun. All right, so let's talk about project shoutouts for this week. This week, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, so I'm writing it here, but NRX. I don't know. Anyways, first, it's a security-based project to help you do things securely, which is always awesome, and those should be not underestimated. Second, it's awesome because it's mostly written in Rust, which is, as we know, the most superior programming language on Earth. And anyways, it's a pretty cool set of projects, and you should check them out. They're also pretty well written. I've been going through them a little bit, and I think that if you're trying to get into Rust and or security, they're well worth a look. All right. Link below, I found a really great article that chimes in with a lot of stuff that I have always said. 5 reasons why you should switch from Jupyter notebooks to using scripts. That's linked below. It gives some great reasons why the author finds scripts to be a lot better than Jupyter Notebook. Quick little thing, something that I mirror personally. Jupyter Notebooks hold this awkward state and really hard reproducible builds. But there's some other cool things. And so you should go read that blog post. And all right. And then the last one is a LGPL project called Glances. If you're used to HTOP or ML sensors or any of those projects that help you monitor your Linux system, Glances is a tool that not only combines all of those things into one user interface, but it also allows you to run it in a client-server configuration so you can see them on another computer, or even hook it up into a larger monitoring system if you wanted to. So go ahead, check that out. Links are below. If you're sitting there thinking, man, I really wish he had covered X, Y, or Z, I'm going to need you to join my Discord and make sure that you let me know if you find something you really want to cover. There is a channel in my Discord server just for that. So if I'm not covering what you want to see, it's really your fault. Please let me know what you'd like to see, what you're interested in, and I will make sure that I cover the latest news in all of those topics. Thank you very much. I hope that you guys have a wonderful next week and that you all stay safe and enjoy your week. Thank you for watching Null News Now. Breaking news. This just in. Windows 95 turned 25. I have no idea how that's important, but for trivia, Windows 95 is now 25 years old, and still the best Windows operating system made. I'm just joking. I liked it. We all know Windows 98 is the best. It also appears that on this momentous occasion, Microsoft has decided to start pushing people away from Internet Explorer. After 25 years of pain and suffering that Internet Explorer has not only unduly put on the user, but also on every single developer that has made a web app, Microsoft is finally looking to start to kill Internet Explorer. That being said, there are about 1,000 enterprise applications that will no longer work because they only supported Internet Explorer, and I'm happy. It was my pleasure to bring you this news on a silver platter. Right to you. Need a good outro. Stringlifier. You can now attach Apache Kafka